Of all the executive positions that you have to hire, by far, hiring a VP of sales is the toughest. You can think you have the right one before you hire the person, but until the person joins your company and starts executing, you just do not know. So that's what makes this so difficult. And in today's video, we're going to walk through exactly what you should do so you'll know by the end of this video if you have a VP of sales who appears to be underperforming, what you should do. I know from my experience, if you follow the process that I'm going to walk you through in this video, that by the end of the video, you're going to know exactly how to solve this problem or a similar problem that we have. So let's go and let's get started. So imagine this real life scenario. You just hired your new VP of sales about 6 months ago, but now you thought you had the right person, but now you have your doubts. The person is just not performing well. Sales aren't growing. The person hasn't been able to hire people. There's strife that's being caused. There's all sorts of issues. And now you're wondering if you've made a huge mistake. Now, to complicate matters, there are two other scenarios here that are going on at the same time. Two other problems. You just let go your previous VP of sales 3 months ago. So now suddenly here you are in the space of 2 years thinking about replacing 2 VPs of sales. And to make matters even worse, you just closed a $20 million round of funding. Now, why does this make this worse? You have new investors, new board members, and you're wondering and you're concerned whether you think they're going to think you're acting in a rash way if you make a quick decision on this, and maybe they'll lose confidence. So what do you do in this real life scenario? So let's walk through your options right now. Okay, so here are the facts. I'm going to walk you through the 4 key facts you need to know in making this decision. So let's walk through them. The first fact is that sales haven't grown since the new VP of sales was hired. Now, this is a big problem, right? Sales aren't growing. And you hired this person to scale. You had been growing, and the goal was now to take what had worked and scale it. And yet it isn't happening. That's the first issue. The second issue is, as I alluded to in my opening, is your new VP of sales is getting into arguments with your executive team. He doesn't seem to respect the other executives, and he's been dismissive of them. He doesn't think they're at his level. That's a problem. Doesn't seem to be fitting into the company culture. Now for the third issue, and it's getting worse. When you talk to the VP of sales about your concerns, the VP of sales pointed the finger at your product and said that the product wasn't up to speed yet, and the product had flaws in it, therefore it wasn't sellable. Yet you're at a $4 million ARR right now. So you're doing $4 million a year of business right now. And you've got somebody there saying, hey, I can't sell this because it's flawed. That's your third set of data. Now for the fourth and final issue. The new VP of sales hasn't been able to add staff. He's added one person from his previous job, and the person's actually pretty good. But beyond that person, in terms of meeting the hiring goals, he hasn't added anybody. And this is a key requirement of the job, was to grow staff to be able to scale. So now here we are, we've got these 4 issues that we just talked about. Now what I'd like you to do, based on what you've heard, is let me know whether we should fire this person or keep this person based on what you've been told. Put your answer in the comments column below. All right. So now here are your options. We're going to walk through really the 2 options that you have. The first option is let's give the VP of sales more time. It's a reasonable option. After all, he's only been there for 6 months. Now, 6 months in this particular case, let's go through a little bit of detail here. Now, 6 months is really about 2 sales cycles. So he's been through takes about 3 months to close a typical customer. You've been through 2 cycles. You haven't seen much progress yet. So that's where you're at there. Now let's talk about the positives of keeping him and the negatives of keeping him. The positives are, first, you can see if things turn around after your conversation with the VP. Now maybe after all, Once you talk to him, maybe he sees the light, maybe you get a good feeling that, you know what, he gets it now. He understands what the problems are. He falls on his sword, so to speak. Maybe that happens. The second issue is that it makes you look measured in the eyes of your board of directors. And that's a big concern, right? Because you have a new group of people, you've got a new board, you've got new investors, and you want to make sure that these people don't think you're so quick to fire people and that they can trust you to run this company because they just gave you $20 million of their money. So if you look like you're going to cut people off, be firing people right and left, and you're not going to be reliable, that could be a big issue. And even though they've told you they're going to support you, you know, support is one thing to say it, it's another thing to mean it. Now let's go through the other side of the coin. What are the negatives of keeping him around at this point in time? Well, it prolongs the inevitable. After all, you've been through 2 sales cycles. Do you know it or not? That's the first one. The second issue is that you could lose the respect of your team by delaying. After all, the CEO is always the last one to know that there's a problem. And you run the risk when you have somebody that isn't fitting in and isn't producing that the best people leave because they think you're not going to do anything. So those are the negatives of keeping him around. Now let's go to the second issue. Should you fire the VP? Well, the positive of firing the VP is you're taking action immediately. You're doing something about it. You're taking action. You're proactive. And you kind of know after 2 sales cycles or not, you know, whether or not the person is producing. The second issue is the team is going to be relieved. Now, I know I'm kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth here, but you've got to be able to gauge how your team feels about people. And if you kind of know, based on your instinct, that the team is going to feel pretty good about you letting somebody go, not because they don't like the person, but because the person isn't performing, that should be part of your decision-making process as well. Now let's go to the negatives of getting rid of this person. The negative is, the first one is, as I said, the board said they're going to support you, but it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to mean it. And I really mean this here because you'll hear all sorts of support from your board and your investors. And I've heard these lines all the time. We're going to support you. And the part of this that they don't tell you is until we don't support you. It's true. So you have to really understand the relationship you have with your investors and board. Now, having said that, it's your company. You should run it the way you see fit. Bear that in mind. The second issue, and this is a real one as well, you don't want to be perceived by the team as not being able to deal with any mistakes. In other words, you have a short hook. Make a mistake, you're gone. Should that be the way you run the company? Absolutely not. So you have to look at all of these variables here in terms of making your decision. So those are the variables that Kevin has to deal with. Now, what did Kevin do? I asked Kevin, as we were discussing this, the last question I asked Kevin is, what would you do if you hadn't just fired your previous VP of sales 3 months ago? And Kevin said instantly, well, I'd fire the new one. And I said, I think that tells you then what to do, because the last decision is clouding this decision. He hasn't performed. You're pretty certain that he's not going to perform. We had talked all through this. It was pretty obvious from our conversation that Kevin was like, yeah, I just don't think it's going to work. But he was worried about the perception of what would happen if he didn't let this person go. And I said, you know what, you've just got to ignore that, because you know what? If it's right, it's right. Your team will respect it. Your investors will respect it. So just go do what you need to do. And that's what Kevin did. So Kevin did the hard thing. He let this person go, and it was the right thing for the company to do. Now we have to see what happens. Can Kevin find a really good replacement? I believe he can. I believe he's going to learn from this. He's going to continue growing, and he's going to find somebody really good. So if you enjoyed today's video, then press the like button, please. If you have comments on today's video, then please put them in the comments column below. If you want more great video content like this, you can subscribe to this channel. If you want more great content from me, then go to my website at www.brettjfox.com and you'll get that instantly. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.